Hello, thank you for joining us on today's episode of Constructive Conversations, the podcast where we aim to bridge the gap in communications between contractors and customers. Joining me today is Lisa McGrath. She's the owner, lead consultant at LPM, which is a construction consulting firm specializing in condo. So on the show today with Lisa, we cover interpreting contracts and legalese, dealing with management teams and condo boards, how to choose the right contractor to deal with, how to look at workmanship warranties, not yelling at people, and how builders are creating bottlenecks and browbeating their contractors. So this is a great conversation. Be sure to listen to the whole thing. I'm sure you're going to gain some great insights. Lisa, thanks so much for joining today.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Nick. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I think you're going to have a lot to contribute to our audience. So to get started, can you talk a little bit more about LPM and what exactly LPM does?
Sure. So LPM Enterprises is a construction consulting firm that specializes in condominiums. So we stand on the side of condo owners and we ensure that all of their projects are being complete, all their construction projects are being completed within the scope that's been provided. And we will also provide scope if necessary. But we work with their trades, we secure their procurement, and we work with them. We're basically their voices. So we're owners' representatives is what we are. We don't want boards or volunteers, and they don't have a lot of background in construction. And for the maybe one-off that does, it gives them a little bit more reassurance when they know that somebody's on their side and will be their voice, because not everybody has the time to go out and pay attention to what the trades are doing. And then I bridge the gaps in all the communication aspects. Everybody can get a hold of me, and I will tell everybody what needs to be told in their specific unit or in their specific project of what's happening and how it's happening.
So that's super, like, an interesting niche. That's unique. I haven't heard of anyone who does this. What led you into that? How'd you end up in this sort of consulting position?
Well, that's a great question. So long story short, I lived in a condo and I joined the board, and the condo went through property managers like water. And I was like, this job can't be this hard. So I got to try it. I got to give it a whirl. So I went and became a property manager, and I actually loved it. It's just peopling. So I do a lot of coursework in, I'm trying to think here of the word, psychology, in psychology, because that's what I'm doing. I'm peopling, right? So I'm dealing with multiple different levels of people in different venues for where they could be and what's happening and what their construction projects are. So once I became a project manager and really enjoyed that, then I went over to construction. I'd been in construction previously, but not at any real capacity. And then I went into construction full tilt, worked my way up to COO, moved over to director of operations at restoration, which is a completely different construction beast. And you see people at their rawest. And then after that, I was just like, I don't want to put any more hours in. Everything was condo driven that I did. So construction was condo driven. The restoration was condo driven. And I was like, I've been this owner. I've been this board representative that doesn't know a lot, that just wants to understand why we're paying our money to managers to manage properties, to, do all this stuff. But then, when I became a manager, I understood. So the really good managers are few and far between. Not that I want to, pee off any managers, but it's true. The really good ones are few and far between, and they're on top of your stuff and they get the right people. It's not necessarily about what they can do for you. It's who they can get for you to make sure everything's going, smooth. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and that's when I just jumped into this niche, because I was like, people in condos are volunteers and they don't know everything. And there's a lot of liabilities that people don't understand if they don't have somebody like me on their side saying, don't do this, do that, or we're not spending this, we're spending that, or looking at the markup that's coming in and saying, yeah, that's, that's reasonable. The markup that they're giving you is.
Oh, I lost you there. You froze. Can you still hear me?
Oh, I can still hear you.
Oh, yeah. No, you just froze for 10 seconds there.
Oh.
But yeah, you were saying that, like, the managers, they don't know the who, they don't know the right people, and they can't manage all of that by themselves because they're volunteers.
The boards are, yeah. The management companies do have vetted contractors, but their idea of vetting and my idea of vetting are two different things. So they want to make projects I speak to their people. I know who I need to talk to, because here's the thing. You can rub shoulders with the owners of these firms and it's all great and dandy, but the person that's doing everything, the coordinators, are the ones that I need to build that rapport with, because they're the ones that are going to make things move, not the owners. The owners are all great, and it's like a clout thing. It's like, oh, the owner took me out for this, or, you know, gave me tickets for that, and that's all great and dandy. They want your business. I want to know that your business is going to continue to flourish because you are good, right? So
yeah, that's great. And that sounds very needed, because there's, like you said, the boards are limited in their knowledge. So what aspect of what you do now drew you in? Was it, you know, the communicating with people, or, you know, being able to help the condo owner, since you mentioned in the beginning? Like,
yeah.
what's sort of your favorite thing that drew you in?
Advocation. I am a big advocate. In every position I've ever filled, I've always been an advocate of some sort. And that got lost a little bit when I was, you know, up running in construction, because of the management that I had around me. And so I'm more of a lean approach person. I want to make sure the right people in the right places, so we're not double dutying, so we're not, you know, doing it again, and we're not browbeating. So I want to make sure that everybody is where they need to be, so that everything can run smooth. Everybody plays a part, including the management teams. So, and I mean, like, managers, even in trades. So for me, it was the advocation for everybody that I'm going to be dealing with, even the trades on site. If I can advocate for them to their bosses to say, you know, they're doing a great job. You don't need to come in here and scream at them. They're on, you know, they're on task and they're doing what they're supposed to, and they're not behind schedule. We don't need to push this any further. I don't need disgruntled trades on my site because, you know, because their boss is having a bad day, because then they're not going to do a good job. So that's one of those things, is that's where the advocation comes in for both boards and the trades.
Yeah, that's interesting that you recognized across, you know, the steps in your career, advocacy was the common element that you're good at. Was there a process you went through to realize that, or were you just aware? Were you always aware that was, you know, your strength?
Honestly, I was always aware that it was my strength, in the sense that it was just something I always just naturally did and gravitated to, was to help people and help them understand and gain clarity in things. I wouldn't have put the word advocation behind it probably 10 years ago. So, and it wasn't something that I sat and said to myself, oh, I'm going to make this a career. It was just something you did, whether you were a boss or whether you were middle management or you were just an employee on the ground. It was just something I always did. So yes and no, I guess, is the answer.
Okay. Yeah, no, that tracks. So can you describe sort of what's a typical, like, customer look like, or a typical experience if there's, you know, a condo hires you, they need some work to be done? Where do you come in, and what do you do for them?
Okay, great question. So what happens is, usually they're going to be dealing with something on their capital reserve expenditures, so that we're looking at stuff like roofs, siding, windows, doors, patio doors, roadways, anything that they're either replacing or they're doing, I guess I'll say, type of like implementation where it's at a larger scale, is where someone like me comes in. I also have a background in restoration. So if there's something going on where they have a loss, I can also come in and help with the owners. And I come in because I have the background and I have the tickets behind me and the experience behind me to know what's going on. I'm not going to claim that I'm a carpenter or that I'm a lawyer or anything like that. I do a similar type job where I kind of bridge gaps for the communication. So I sit down with them and I go over their insurance and help them understand what their insurance documents do. So I have a background in construction law. I have a background with understanding legislation and legalese really well. So I'll explain to them, this is what you need to ask your insurance, or this is what your insurance is covering. And then the same thing with the projects. This is what your contract says. This is, you know, because a lot of times I'll encourage them to go do a CCDC contract, depending on what's going on. A lot of times these contractors will come in with their own contracts. And what they don't realize is that somebody's actually reading them when someone like me comes onto site. So I'm reading their contracts very thoroughly. And I will go back to them and say, are you sure you want to put this in here? When I say that, I mean things that could hurt both people. If it's something that makes sense to me, where they're like, you know, I've had one where it says, you know, that they did power sanding is included in their project. And then they had to change the grit on their sander. So they were going to try and charge the board thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars for sanding. And I was like, that's in your contract. And they're like, oh, no, it's only scuff sanding. Well, your contract says power sanding. It's power sanding. Sorry, guys. I'm like, I'll go to Home Depot and buy you a box of freaking, sandpaper grit. I'm like, what do you need? Like, you want 220, 240? What do you need? Like, it's going to be the same amount of hours at the end of the day. And they were really upset because they were like, well, and I'm like, be careful what you put in your contracts. If you want to be able to be paid, if you want to be paid for an additional cost, which at the same time, I still would have argued with them, because you and I both know, especially with your background, Nick, that when you're sanding something, the grit makes the difference. Yeah. So if it's going to take the same amount of time to sand something, depending on the grit that you're using and what you're trying to accomplish with that sanding. So to me, you almost come across, it's either you're insulting my intelligence or you're not very smart. So I like to go with you're not very smart. Yeah. Because if you're insulting my intelligence, that doesn't work well. Right? Because nobody wants to be insulted, because then it's like, don't insult my intelligence. But so I just asked them, I'm like, are you sure? Like, do you do this for a living? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, then you should know this. So that's kind of where I just one item where I'll protect an owner. I come in through management teams. Management teams will find me, or boards will find me. And because I am a volunteer with CCI and COF, I'm in front of a lot of boards that when they ask questions, they'll get the answers if they have them for me. I go into a lot of their meetings. And so I don't have a problem answering boards questions, but I will never answer a question if I'm not 100% certain.
That's good policy.
Yeah.
So we talked previously about, I think, like an example where you mentioned a lot of the time you get brought in by the management teams or the boards, but later on, like later than they should have, because they're being reactive to something's gone wrong. Can you give an example of that? And what does that look like?
Oh, okay. So it's interesting. I actually have it. You're absolutely correct when we were talking about that. So I actually have it in my rate sheet that if I'm coming in, so I call it a project rescue, where I'm coming in because things have gone sour. And so what happens is I'll come in and I will survey the property with what based on my expertise of what I can do. And then I'll tell them that they need to bring in whoever. We need to bring in an engineer. We need to bring in a roadway contract. We need to bring in an asphalt expert. We need to bring in, a carpenter, someone who's an expert in their field, because I'm not those things. I don't have journeyman tickets. So I'm not about to declare that that's what I am, but I know what to look for. So then I'll bring these professionals in and we'll go through it. And then I'll ask them what the cost is for correcting it. And I've got a lot of really great trades behind me that will help me with all these things. And then I will go back to the board and I'll say, we need to go back to the contractor and we need to ask them to repair this, or we need to ask them to come back to the site and go through it with me. If they are not willing to do so, this contractor is, and this is their price. So I have that already for them so that they're not like, well, what if he doesn't come back? And because best case scenario is contractors come back, but I will tell you, it has happened where I've called the contractor that did an overlay for a roadway. And it was, between you and I, it was a mess. Okay. That he did not, when he did the overlay, he did not talk about grading issues that were already there that he now exacerbated. He put asphalt that was anywhere from 4 inches to 1 millimeter all through, like sparsed all throughout the complex. And I was like, what is going on? And like and because the asphalt was really soft, because it was more like a cold pack, which is what you put in when you're just repairing some holes, but he did the whole overlay and called it a hot pack. And I'm like, no. Then he didn't use proper products. He didn't use a proper sealant. I'm like, you have like vegetation growing through not even a year later. Like, this isn't done properly. So I went back to the contractor and said, hey, this is who I am. I've been instructed by the board to, have you come back to site, you and I take a walk, and we'll go over how maybe we can fix this. And he basically gave me the middle finger and said, call my lawyer, don't care. And I'm like, your contract has 4 years of workmanship warranty. I'm like, either you're not reading your contract, or you're one of these fly-by-night companies that make all these promises and then drop your company and run away. I'm like, understand that I've already Googled and gone to all the right authorities to know exactly who you are and how many companies you've had. So that's the other thing is I'll do the deep dive research to make sure that these trades know that I'm not messing around. If I can't come after your company, I'm coming after you directly as a person, because you shouldn't be doing that. If you're good at your job, like, you shouldn't be taking a $200,000 to $300,000 project and then having a 4-year workmanship warranty and then just bailing on the site altogether. because the board wasn't angry. They just wanted this to be fixed. Like there was nobody was angry. Do you know what I mean? It was just, this is a problem, let's fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
some people, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's a shame that there's companies out there that do that. And, you mentioned the model where they'll change the company name, they'll disappear, they'll fall off the map when you try to contact them about warranty. So it's almost like you're a detective who's out there, differentiating between like, is this a legitimate player? Are they here to do a good job? Yeah. Is there more people like you? Is this very niche? Is this like an industry? Because, it's new to me, but it's super interesting. And I think it's needed in the industry.
So far, I'm the only one. So I think it's kind of interesting, because as I was telling you, much like how we're podcasting right now with you, I'm going to have you come over to me, because this is kind of something that I've been pushed into doing, and not pushed in a bad way. They say greatness is thrusted upon you, with great with what is it? Great power comes great responsibility. Yep. Okay. So, but it's funny because I've got people all over Canada and the US that are bugging for someone like me to come out. They're like, you don't exist. People like you don't exist. So I'm going to be on my way probably into Toronto and a few other, metropolises in Canada to take a look at what's going on to expand. But right now it's hard because someone like me, I don't have a great big team. I'm all about quality, not quantity. And that's hard because there's so many condos that are just erecting left, right, and center. And then I don't deal with the new build. New builders they go to the beat of their own drum. So unless it's someone like a large investor who comes in, who knows not a whole lot about construction, but enough to get by, and says, I want this builder to build me a condo, then he could hire someone like me. I will reach out to commercial has come up to me and said, will you come, make sure everything, all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. And I'm like, sure. So, but the big thing with that is that what a lot of people don't understand is the difference between me and everybody else is that I am steering that ship, but I'm not doing it the old school way where I'm screaming at people. I tell them I'm a 3-strike rule person. The first time I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. The second time I will turn my head. And the third time I'm like, you're going to see a different side and you're not going to like it. So, and that's just how it goes for me. But I don't believe in screaming at people to get things done. I believe in letting them know where their lines are. You get some trades that try to drag things out a little bit. They're like, oh, well, they bit off more than they can chew. So they've got like 4 projects on the go. And then, you just kind of remind them, you'd be like, listen, if we don't hit timeline on this, then this trade can't come in. And if that happens, then I'm going to have to charge you every day you're late, because this is the plan. This is what you signed for. And usually they're pretty responsive. They're like, okay. And they go, but I'm just yelling at people is not something I don't take pride in doing anything. I think it's
but I like the 3-strike rule. That's more than fair. And a couple of questions coming from that. So when you say, there's not many of you, do you think that's because you have that unique background of experiences that, puts you in the position to, understand the needs of the board or the management and communicate with the contractors? Do you think it's that specific mix that, makes it so you can do what you do?
I think it's part of it. I think the other part of it is that there's so many things that have transpired over the last 5 years that people, if we're being honest, Nick, people hate people. People have seen some really ugly sides of what people are capable of when they're locked up, when they're treated like, you can't do this and you can't do that. And there was a lot of turmoil that happened in 2020 to 2022, even 2023 of just the effects. And there's still some of them happening. So what happens is if you don't have a genuine love, I guess, for people and want to help, then, a lot of people, there's that old saying, like, that's not my job. I'm a project manager, but I'm not here to talk to the ownership. I'm here to deal with the board and my boss. I'm not here to talk to anybody else. Right. So whereas me, there's no such, and I've been like this in all of my jobs. There's no such thing as no. Like, I remember when I worked for, a large company out here, and they were like, oh, you can't talk to the executives. And I was like, watch me. Like, they're people. Right. And I remember, and I would talk to the owner of the company, and it was a very large company, and it was a monopoly out here in Alberta for a long time. And I would go and talk to the owner. He was a great guy. He was really nice. He never gave me a hard time. I never got don't go up and bother this person. People would say things like that before I go speak with this person, but they're all just people at the end of the day, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And so the way I'm understanding what you're saying, yeah, like coming out of lockdowns, another way to put that is people won't take responsibility. So like you said, someone's like, not my job. So you're sort of the backstop. And you're like, no, I'm taking responsibility. I'm gonna, make sure this gets done and as it should. So yeah, definitely, I think that's missing in a lot of places.
Yeah, well, you had two types of people that came out of this. You had the people that were like, I don't want to go back to the office. I want to stay home. And then you had the people that were like, I want to get back out there and start going again, right? Those are the two. There's no in between. It was, I either want to stay home or I want to do this. And the people that want to stay home, then you're dividing them into subcategories. You've got the people that stay home and do a lot of work and do it well. And they do better in their own surroundings. And then you've got people who piss around all day and they're like, oh, I'll just go do the laundry. Oh, the kids need me. Oh, I'm going to make lunch. Do they get their time done? Some of them, yes, they'll work till 9 o'clock when the kids are put down, and then they'll get back on the computer and they'll do their job. No problem. But a lot of them are just like, meh. So employers are getting mad and they're like, it's getting very cutthroat out there. So there's a lot of new legislation that's coming out in various ways in different industries. That's basically saying like, you need to get back to work. Like we need this country to keep moving, and it's not going to move if you're sitting at home.
Yeah. And that definitely makes sense. Get people, taking responsibility back, doing what, their job description is.
Yeah.
And then the other one to touch on, which you mentioned, like, so you're, the way you operate is not screaming at people, but when we look at the construction industry in general, there's a lot of that, and it sort of gets, the way I see it, it gets passed down through the, the training and as people step up the ladder and they inherit that, like, oh, I was trained by someone yelling at me whenever I did it wrong. Do you think that's changing, or do you think there's opportunities to change that dynamic as a whole? What are your thoughts on that?
So if I'm being honest, I don't think it's changing quite as quickly as we'd all hope. I think there are different companies that are bringing in different people that have that same mindset of, I don't want to be yelled at, so I'm not going to yell. Excuse me. I think that people are, some companies out there are taking a different approach to working and making sure that they are acknowledging the different strengths and weaknesses within their teams and placing them accordingly. And that's a huge thing. So there's a couple of construction companies out there. I know Leadcore is one of them. Westcore is another. They're starting to really move into this lean approach where they're putting the right people in the right places. I think PCL is also doing something like that. And then the smaller guys are they're going to start following suit more and more. But what we run into is nepotism. And that's the big problem in construction is, oh, well, why is Billy running this site? Oh, well, his dad runs 2 other sites, of this subsidiary or whatever. And I'm like, well, Billy's an idiot, because what ends up happening is that it's not like it was, for the kids that grew up in the 70s and 80s where their parents were harder on them at work than they were at home and anybody else, right? Like I'm that generation where if my kids come work for me, they're not getting any favors. They're not getting promoted without having the knowledge and the background, and they're going to work under people. It's not going to be, oh, well, that's Lisa's, daughter or son. You need to be nice to them. I'll be like, no, if they're being stupid, write them up. Like there's no passes here. So, and that's what's happening is a lot of them are getting passes. And they're spinning in a chair and they know nothing about carpentry, nothing about roofing, nothing about roads. They know nothing. And they're running these crews, and then they think they can talk to them because they don't understand and they don't want to come across stupid. So they yell at people. Meanwhile, the trades are sitting there looking at them. These poor guys are like, this guy's an idiot. He doesn't even know what we're talking about. And because you can throw in especially as a carpenter, there's all these little names and words for different things. And you guys have your own jargon. So, and I've been in the crossfire of it a couple of times and been like, what are you guys talking about? But I'll ask. I won't be like, oh yeah, absolutely. I know what you're talking about. Like I remember the first time I heard the word capillaries and I was like, what's that? And they're like, look up. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, walking through a space that's, basically down to its bones, and they're talking about all the things over in the roofing area, right up in the attics. And so I was like, oh, so you have to be malleable in this industry. And a lot of people have too much ego is the problem. But I don't think it's moving as fast as we'd like, Nick, if I'm being honest. I think people are going to continue to yell and scream because they think that that's the way they're going to get results, and it's not. It doesn't mean I don't yell and scream, because I do yell and scream, but I do it with the people that I know are on the same level as me. So if an owner of a trade company comes onto site and starts pissing off the guys, I will go yell at him. I'm not scared to yell at him. So because I'm like, don't mess my site up. And the reason for that is because if I've got 6 different companies, 5 different companies, 4 different companies working on my site, we're a team. You're not company A, company Z, and company X. We are this team. And I make sure everybody is acknowledged the same. Everybody is encouraged the same. Everybody is given the same appreciation. I'll do appreciation days where I'll get them breakfast sandwiches. I'll get them lunch. I'll tell them how great they are. I'll go through and encourage them, because that's what appreciation goes a long way. People want to work for people when they're appreciated for what they do. I'd go to site every day and be like, oh my God, you guys are doing great. This is awesome. I'm like, if you guys bang this out of the park, I'm like, breakfast sandwiches tomorrow, and then you guys can take off Friday at 2:30. And they're like, so.
Yeah, it doesn't take much, but yeah, that makes a huge difference, in somebody's working day, and being appreciated. They notice it, and I think that shows, like, in the end result and end product of the work. Are happy to be coming to work and be coming to the site. And you mentioned, this was also when we were talking previously, and a little bit at the intro, holding companies to a higher standard, or even to their own standard. Can you give some examples of what that looks like?
Sure. Really easy. Safety. If you have a safety manual and you are not adhering to your safety manual, I will call you out for it. I will shut down the site. So I'm designated safety. I'm designated HSA. I could have went and got my NCSO and probably my gold seal by now, but I didn't want to keep up my auditor. So I was like, I got what I need. But that's a huge one. I build safety manuals for a living. So the fact that I've built multiple safety manuals and multiple aspects of construction, when someone has one, even if it's brass tacks and they're core certified and they're running around screaming that they're core certified, if you are not maintaining your safety manual and adhering to it at its full capacity, I'll call you out. And that's a huge thing. I'll give you an example of roofers. Roofers are the bane of my existence. They do some of the most amazing work, and like the acrobats on these boys is insane. Tie off. You all make me crazy. Tie off. So, you know what I mean? They don't put in proper anchor points. They don't use their anchor points. They have a rope tied to them. I'm like, what's that tied to? And they're like, oh, it's somewhere. No, it's just hanging. I'm like, I can't help you if you guys fall off the roof.
Nope.
So, and they move so fast. I understand both sides. I understand that they're like, we move so fast that we only have so much slack. And I'm like, then put multiple anchor points and just quickly just move yourself over. And they're like, we got to walk all the way back and all the way. And I'm like, safety. Your manual dictates it. Yeah,
that's good that you're able to hold them to their standard and impress it upon them. I tell my guys, there's no delay, that's worth your safety. There's nothing on a job site that's ever worth compromising your safety. You're not going home in the same shape you came to work. So yeah, that's definitely important. Yeah, and it's good that someone's there to hold that standard, because I think that I like processes and systems. There's a lot of companies too that have, here's the SOP binder that we made, collecting dust on the shelf, and it's similar, that it doesn't get touched. So it's just words alone, right? They're not acting on.
Yeah, it's for sure. But I think a lot of the reasons why a lot of these boys don't listen to safety or adhere to it at the full capacity of whatever their company has done for them or created in that manual is because of the nepotism and browbeating. It gets lost. It's like, we've done this so we can get more work. And then, and it's like, well, when you go to get an external audit, you can't, I've seen companies where they're, I've even been in a company where people are signing documents, because they didn't do like months worth of JHAs and they're trying, and I'm like, oh, can't do that. Yeah. So, and that, I think that's a big thing too, is that when you're getting browbeat, get it done. Don't care. I need it done by this time. They start to compromise and get complacent and start to just do whatever they need to do to get it done. Where someone like me is like, listen, I'm going to send you home tonight. So It doesn't matter if you need to take an extra 20 minutes to do this, or an extra hour. I'm okay with it. You have to answer to me at the end of the day. And I'm not going to give you a hard time. Like, let me see your JHA. A lot of times I will hold the safety meetings at the beginning of the site for all of the trades so that it's done. So if OH&S comes to site, it's like, here's my binder. All the trades have signed. These are their different tasks. Here you go. And, you know, and I pride myself on being very organized in paperwork. I have binders for all of my projects that are handed at the end of every project. It's handed to the ownership that has done the project. So it has all of their colors, contracts, invoicing, communication, everything, has everything.
So what do you say? So say you're running a job, or you're brought into one that's ongoing, you sort of take over, you know, are those contractors, when that job's done and you know, they've dealt with you, they've done their work, are they better off than when they started? And, you know, in what way?
Depends on the contractor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being perfectly honest. In a perfect world, I'd love to say yes to you, Nick, but you know what? Sometimes no. Sometimes they're bitter and pissed off that I've come in. Sometimes they're mad because I'm a female. Sometimes they're mad because I don't put up with their crap. Sometimes they're mad because their boss is angry about it, and it's a trickle down effect. And then sometimes they're super happy and they're like, oh my God, she's great. And she's kept us all as a team. And she's got, you know, we got to hit the finish line with her. So it's a mix. I would like to say that if I start the project, they're usually, you know, they're already good to begin with. So if anyone's better off, it's the guys I got my hands on, in the sense, right, where I was talking to them on the daily, might be leaving a little bit better off. Coming into a project, it is a mixed emotion aspect. I couldn't sit here and tell you they're better off. I would say that I would hope that they take something away from it, even if I don't see it. But I don't know all the time.
Yeah. And that's hard to tell, but yeah, because if you didn't hire them, then who knows what background they have. Can you talk a little bit about what you do to screen and choose contractors that you're going to work with, or, you know, I don't know, do you suggest to the board or to the managers who to bring on, or do they give you a sort of free rein to pick contractors?
Oh no, it still needs to go through an approval process through the board of directors. But I will always go to you have to work with the management team. So it's like, do you guys have contractors? Is there a contractor that's already on this site that does something like this? You never want to, when they already have vetted contractors that are probably already on the site, there's a good chance that they're going to know the site very well, which means there's going to be less hiccups. So I'll always go and see who they have. But yes, there's times where we're doing a door window project. Nobody has a door window guy, right? Those are projects that are big projects that come and go. And yes, so how I vet them is I call the owners. I will go visit their sites. I will go look at where they've done jobs before. I will follow up on their referrals. I will follow up on their references. I will look at all of their insurances, and I'll make sure that the quality is there. And I'll even go sometimes, depending on how large the job is or who the company is, I'll go talk to some of their people. I'll meet them on a site and go talk to their people and find out what's going on internally, if there's any disgruntled. Because I mean, people will say, oh, someone's always disgruntled. Yes, somebody is always disgruntled. How much influence do they have on that site? Yeah.
And is that like seeped into the culture, right?
Right. Exactly. So it's like, if somebody's upset about something, that's the thing. Everybody's upset about something. It doesn't have to be company. It can be anything. But if they're like, to me, I call it a fit for duty. And you know what? I call it that because I was, you know, lucky enough to meet an amazing specialist in HR who called it that. She was like, it's fit for duty, Lisa. And she's an amazing HR consultant that actually I had brought into one of the companies that I had worked for. And so she, you know, got me going on a whole bunch of different terms of how we can kind of create an HR aspect that not only protects companies, but helps employees understand, you know, what's what. So instead of saying, people say, do you have a drug and alcohol policy? No, we have a fit for duty policy, because drugs and alcohol expand further. It's not just, are you taking recreational drugs? It's also, are you on Sudafed? Are you on something? Are you on, you know, Benadryl that's going to make you sleepy or hyperactive? So everything affects you. And also not only that, but then doing the fit for duty covers all of the different aspects in safety, biological, you know, psychological, chemical. It fits everything. Have you been around this? Have you been around that? How are you feeling? You know what? I've had guys that come to work and they've, you know, split up with their spouses, and their head is not in the game. And I'm like, go take a day, go take a drive. See you later. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And
definitely becomes a safety issue then, right?
100%. But a lot of people, these guys are like, oh, I got to get this done. You know what? It's going to be here tomorrow. It's okay. You can just take a drive. I don't need to know the details of your life. If you want to sit in a truck and go for a drive and tell me about it, I'll take that drive with you. But if you don't, and you just want to go and just have a day, go have a day. Some guys most men don't want to delve out their feelings, but they don't want to be there either. But then they're confused because they're like, if I work, then I don't got to think about it. But what's happening is they're working and thinking about it, and then they miss, right? Yeah. So it's like, so I always just say, just go take a drive. Like, go on, take the day off. It's fine. And then some people will say, well, I can't afford it. And I'll be like, you know what? I'll call it in as a sick day for you. No problem. Go take a day and come back tomorrow and let me know if you need more days. And then we'll look into making sure that there's some sort of compensation to help you with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to deal with that. And then broader question, if there's, management teams, condo boards, and any one of your typical clients listening to this, and they're not local, they're too far away to bring you in. Can you give some tips for them to help avoid some of the issues that you mentioned that commonly come up when they need to do a big renovation, restoration, or some kind of project?
Okay, so the best tip I can give anybody is contractors are really good talkers. So they need to do their research on that contractor and not what he gives you, what you find. So what you want them to give you is their insurances, and make sure they're current, not just a piece of paper and don't look at it. Make sure their insurances are current. Make sure they're proper insurances like general liability and E&O and anything else they might be doing, any type of safety work that they're doing, especially like hot work and stuff like that can come with different insurances. So check their insurances and then go and look up their stuff and then ask them for references. And what you're going to do is when you ask them for references, you want the addresses, you don't want the people. And then you're going to go look at those properties. And you can do it. Wonderful thing about the internet is you can actually pull it up on Google Maps and you can go right onto the street and you can look at what they've done. And, so that's my best piece of advice. You have to vet your contractors because these guys are so good at talking that people are like, oh, he seems like he's a really good guy and he's going to do this and he's going to do that. And then all of a sudden he's got $250,000 worth of your money and he hasn't completed the job and he's gone. So that would be my best piece of advice.
Yeah, that is a great tip. So get the references of a location, go to the location and do your own research. Don't just take someone's word for it. Yeah, verify whatever you're getting. Yeah, that's great. And then looking forward, can you talk about sort of what do you see to be new or coming up in the future? The industry that you operate in, or construction in general. What do you see, 5 years from now, changes that are coming up and what's going on there?
Ooh, that's kind of a heavy question, Nick. It's a big one. So for my industry, condos are going to continue to be prevalent. They're easy in the sense that people, if they want a no fuss, no muss type of, ownership style house or, residence, they go to a condo. So that's one thing. And then a lot of people don't mind living because a lot of people will do the what do you call them? Their townhouse. So they're not stacks. So stacks are apartment. They're like the string of condos where they have their own entrance, their own exit. They might have a little yard, a privacy area. And then so they can still, kind of do what they want to have a couple of pets. It's not going to bug. If you have a larger dog and you have a little tiny yard, it's no big deal. But condos are going to continue to grow, and there's going to be more and more condos. Where I worry for this industry is that I don't believe things are going to change as quickly as people would like them to see change. At the same time, I don't think everything should change. I think that the demands that some people are making to see changes in the industry is where it's getting lost. Like there's a lot of gripe about, the type of people that are working in trade. Like there's a labor shortage right now in trades. And the reason for that is because trades used to be super lucrative. You could make 15 to 20% and walk away and be like happy as a clam. People were like, I'm in shape. I can do this. I can do that. I've got a trade. Trades were where people went if you wanted stable work, almost like a recession-proof work. And now they're getting nickel and dimed to death. And the reason that they're getting nickel and dimed is because people aren't organized. So all of these people that are coming in, like as in companies that are bringing them in, I'll give you an example. Builders are bringing in trades, but because the builder isn't organized, he's then bottlenecking his trades. He's then browbeating his trades because he's got to push one off, but then they can't come back for another 2 weeks, and then they're behind and this and that, and then they're angry, but they're not set up to do everything properly. And not all builders, but there's a lot of them out there that do this. So I don't know if it's going to progress. I would hope that more companies will take the lean approach that, you know, the Calgary Construction Association helps support, and the lean committee has, you know, lean coffee, and on some of the Fridays I go to them. There's a lot of amazing people and owners and different types of reps for their companies that go to these lean coffees. And I think more construction companies that take that approach and actually apply it, there's hope for the construction industry to grow and flourish. And we got to get rid of this nepotism. Like, it's got to go. And stop putting people in seats that they know nothing about just because they know somebody. You know, they always say it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. That's got to change. It's got to be both. Yeah,
it's got to be, you know, merit-based and based on qualifications. But yeah, I totally hear what you're saying about, you know, builders bottlenecking their trades. I was just talking to one trade, and he's been getting pushed off from a big job for 8 weeks, but 2 weeks at a time. So then he can't plan his other jobs, throwing off his schedule. And then they're, you know, who knows if they're going to be unhappy with him once he starts. Oh, you're 8 weeks behind, but you know, when they just started. So do you have any sort of suggestions along those lines on like how can companies be more organized to avoid those bottlenecks and creating their own problems that way? Well,
it's putting people in the right place. That's what it is. So these builders need to have, it's got to start from the top. It has to start from the top. And it's not. It's like all these glorified managers making, you know, 6 figures a year that don't have not all of them, but a lot of them don't have the understanding of construction. Here's where people will come at me. Well, Lisa, some people are good at managing people and some people are good on the tools. Okay, you're right. Absolutely. I'll give you that. But here's the thing. If you're good with people, then go out to the sites and learn the trade. Because you know what? There's nothing more that those guys want than to see you down there in the trenches with them, wanting to learn what they do and go through every single day. So don't sit here and tell me that, well, some people can manage people, because if you truly manage people, you would take the time to learn what they do and understand what they go through and where the stress comes in. And that's what I did. That's the difference between me and everybody else. Is I've been in the trenches. I've hauled garbage. I've slung rock. I've pulled floors right beside the guys and help them and say, why are we doing this? Why do we do it this way? Why do we take this much wall? Why are we taking this out? Why are we painting this? You know, and the guys will tell me, and they're like, and I'll say, okay, and I'll write it down and I'll repeat it back to them so that they know I understand. And they're like, okay, I don't have a lot of problems on site as a female. I only have problems on site as a female when there's an ego problem. If there's no ego problem, 99% of the guys that I'm working beside have zero problem with me, because I'm not mean, I'm not rude, I come at it from a different approach, and I'm willing to learn what they do and be in there with them and help them, not just stand there with a clipboard, as we call them, clipboard cowboys, right? So, and not be one of those. Be like, I see them walking out of the building, he's got 3 bags, I go grab one. Give me one of those. What the hell are you doing? Like, that's a lot, you know? And so, and they appreciate that. They're like, oh, she's not scared to, you know, she's not scared to get her hands dirty. And I'm like, you know, and I'll tell a lot of the trades, you know, because I get my nails done and all that. But if I'm going onto a site where there's a lot of debris and whatnot, you know, it's not just like a finishing project, there's tear down, there's demo or whatnot. I will get my nails right shortened and I'll get my gloves out and I'll go, let's go. No big deal. You know, break a nail, we can go fix it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I like that. And, you know, that makes me think even, you know, in a McDonald's franchise, the franchisee has to start making fries and flipping burgers and go through each of the roles. That, you know, that's part of their training if they want to own the store. So that's kind of your suggestion to the companies is, you know, have everybody. It doesn't mean they have to do it for 4 years. Just go down there and have some experience at every level. So then they can relate. And yeah, I agree that would definitely help. You know, instead of just saying, super beneficial. Yeah. You have all these wonderful PMAs, right, or assistants that are sitting in the office, and these
women and men that are sitting in the office should be on site at least once a week, seeing what everybody's doing, having the conversation, asking the questions, because they're going to be that much better at their job. So when the guys are saying, I need you to write this up, blah, 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 or their project manager saying it, or their construction manager saying it, they know. They're like, oh yeah, I saw that. And they'll be able to put it into words, not keep calling him or her and saying, what did you say again? And what does that mean? And how do I spell that? Because they don't know.
Yeah, yeah. It goes from being just a line item to, you know, an experience that they can visualize and something they've actually done. We're going to clip this and share that clip around, because that's excellent advice. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, I think so. That's what I do. I think it's the best way to do it. And I think it's how you get the most respect on site. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. I think you get the most respect on site when you're willing to, you know, get your hands dirty. Yeah.
Great.
That's kind of, you know, what I can kind of say to help you out for some tips and tricks for both companies and for condos. But I mean, like, I know that you're a carpenter by trade, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
exactly.
I mean, and that's the one thing, is that I think just people need to understand that there's different levels of carpentry. Carpentry is not just like you go in and put baseboard in. I think they need to understand the true skill behind being a carpenter, and then a finishing carpenter and a framing carpenter and all of those wonderful things. So one of these days, I hope you, if you haven't, you should make sure people understand that there are different levels, because they're like, oh, he's a carpenter, he can build stairs. And I'm like, not all carpenters can build stairs.
Yeah. There almost needs to be more terms, because it encompasses a whole lot. Yeah, when you say carpenter. Yeah, that's great. So Lisa, where can people get a hold of you or connect with you?
Well, they can travel off to my little site there at lpmenterprises.net and take a look there, and they can reach me right through my website and take a look at it. There's lots of wonderful information on there. Or they can give me a call, 403-477-7254, direct on my cell, or send me a text message, and I'll happily respond.
Okay, great. And we'll have that in the show notes as well. So anyone interested can just hit the link on there and find you. Well, Lisa, thanks for coming on the show. It was great to have you.
No, thanks, Nick. I appreciate it.